SGV Mahesh PU College, Belagavi. Welcome to the Department of Chemistry. Unit cell and crystal lattice. Crystal lattice and unit cell. In order to understand crystal lattice and unit cell, we should know what are lattice points. Lattice points are the points which indicates the relative position of constituent particles, that is atoms, ions or molecules in a crystal. If you observe the diagram here, so this one here all indicates the lattice point, and or it is also called as lattice sites, and each this indicates the position of constituent particles. It may be atom or it may be ion or it may be molecule. Crystal lattice or space lattice. It's a regular three-dimensional arrangement of lattice point in space. If you consider this particular diagram, so it is the lattice point arrangement. If the same kind of arrangement repeats over and over again in three-dimensional space in all the direction, then you will get a structure called as crystal lattice or space lattice. Unit cell. It is the smallest unit of the crystal lattice, which when repeat in different direction gives the crystal lattice. If you want to understand unit cell, look at this particular diagram. In this particular diagram, this indicates the unit cell, which is the smallest portion of this whole crystal lattice. And when this unit cell repeats over and over again in three dimension, you will be getting the complete structure that is called as crystal or crystal lattice we call it. Unit cell, it is of two types based upon the arrangement of atoms. There are two types. One is primitive unit cell or it is also called as simple unit cell we call it. And the second one is centered unit cell or it is also called as non-primitive unit cell. Primitive unit cell, in this case, the constituent particles that may be ions or atoms or molecules are present only at the corners. In centered unit cell, the constituent particles are present in a position corner as well as some other position that is called as centered position. That means in centered unit cell, the constituent particles are present in corner. In addition to that, there are some atoms are at the centered positions. Characteristics of crystal lattice. If you take a crystal or crystal lattice, then what are the characteristics of that crystal lattice? We'll discuss one by one. First one, each point in a crystal lattice is called lattice point or lattice. If you take a crystal lattice, in that we have indicated each point, and that each point is called as lattice point or lattice site we call it. And next one is each point in a crystal lattice represents one constituent particle, which may be an atom or molecule or an ion. Lattice points are joined by straight line to bring about the geometry of the crystal. If you want to get the geometry of the crystal, then that lattice points are joined by a straight line so that we can get the geometry of that particular crystal. Some important terms. First one is face. It's a plane surface of crystal. If you take a crystal, in that there are 6 faces. Second one is edge. It's the line along the two adjacent faces. If you take a crystal, there are 12 edges. Next one is interfacial angle. It is the angle between the adjacent faces of the crystal. If you consider a crystal, there will be three kinds of angle. We call it as alpha, beta, and gamma. Parameters of the unit cell. So why we are using these parameters of the unit cell? These parameters of the unit cell which will decide the size, shape of the unit cell. First one in that parameters, the distance A, B, C along the three edges of the unit cell, and we call that one as a edge length. A, B, C are the edge lengths, and look at here in this particular diagram. See, A is a edge length, B is also edge length, C is also edge length. So these are edge length along X, Y, Z axis. And then angles, so interfacial angle we call it. So there are three angles, alpha, beta and gamma. Angles between the edges, alpha, that is between B and C, you can observe, and beta is the angle between A and C, and gamma is between A and B. Look at the diagram and you will come to know. So that means there are 6 parameters which will decide the size and shape of the unit cell. One is the edge length A, B, C, and the interfacial angle alpha, beta, gamma. Total 6 parameters are there to decide the unit cell. Type of unit cell, I said there are two types of unit cell. One is simple or primitive unit cell in which atoms are present only at the corners, and the next one is centered unit cell, or it is also called as non-primitive unit cell, in which the atoms are at the corners. In addition to that, some atoms are present at the centered position of the unit cell. Let us consider the centered unit cell. In centered unit cell, we have got different types. The first one is body centered unit cell. What is body centered unit cell? Body centered unit cell means a unit cell in which atoms are at the corners and one atom is present at the body center. If you look at the diagram, the corner atoms are indicated by white and the body centered atom is denoted by red color. Okay, that is called as body centered. So corner atoms are common for all kinds of unit cell. In addition to that, some centered atoms in body centered unit cell, atom is at the body center. Next one is face centered. In face centered unit cell, atoms are at the corners. In addition to that, there are 6 atoms are at the face center. Why 6 atoms? Because if you consider a crystal or a unit cell, for that there are 6 faces and each face center one atom. So totally 6 face centered atoms, and that is called as face centered unit cell. Next one is end face centered unit cell. So what is this end face centered unit cell? Here atoms are at the corners. In addition to that, atoms are present any two opposite faces, that is centered portion of any two opposite faces, and that is called as end face centered unit cell. You can take any two opposite faces and in that we have to take the face centered atoms, and along with that atoms are at the corners. Atoms are at the corner is a common. In addition to that, there must be a face centered atom which is the opposite faces. It should be opposite faces. That's why we call it as end face centered. The last one is edge centered unit cell. In edge centered unit cell, there are atoms are at the corners. In addition to that, there are some atoms or there are atoms in each edge center. So if you consider a crystal or unit cell, there are 12 edges. In all the 12 edge center, there will be one atom. That means 12 edge center atoms will be present and 8 corner atoms. It is a common. That is called as edge center unit cell.